Welcome to Breaking the Couch, a weekly conversation demystifying what happens in and behind the therapy scene to support your healing journey. We're your hosts.
I'm Dr. Doughton, a licensed clinical professional counselor, a certified school psychologist, and a trauma specialist with Playfully Psyched.
And I'm Dr. Joe Harchi with Soft Art Psychology, a licensed clinical psychologist.
We're here aiming to provide you with mental health tools to address the cycle of generational trauma across the age span, from infancy and childhood to adulthood.
For more information, visit our Instagram page at Breaking the Couch or our website, breakingthecouch.com. While we hope you love listening to and learning from our podcast, it's not a substitute for a relationship with a licensed mental health professional.
All right, and we are back talking a little bit more about EMDR today. Eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which is primarily a trauma intervention, although I know that people have used it for anxiety and a few other things, but primarily a trauma intervention that Dr. Jaharchi and I are both trained in. And Dr. Jaharchi does some intensives EMDR, right? So she does intensive EMDR sessions, and we thought it would be really good to talk about that, what it looks like, when it's appropriate, and how it can be a vessel to further healing.
I would love to talk more about that. It's so funny because there's different ways that people have described intensives that I think is useful. I've heard people talk about how it's like a chunk of sessions, basically. So like a chunk of EMDR sessions. I've heard other people talk about how it's like a lot of resourcing or grounding, anchoring ahead of time, and then a little bit of reprocessing all at once. So there's different ways to think about it, but one thing I will say is that like folks will say intensive sounds scary. So I'm starting to think about like calling it like
Absolutely.
a retreat, right? It's like intense, right?
Sounds like I'm going to be, having breaks from reality. I'm going to be delusional. I'm going to be in pain. I'm going to be hurt. Super
Yeah.
intense, right? Therapy is already heavy and you're going to make it even more intense. That's what it does. It sounds scary.
It sounds intense, yeah. So I'm always like, listen, you have the stop sign, you have the pause button. I'll be checking your face and your body and the vibes for cues besides you telling me you're gonna need a break. But there's also so much resourcing. So I'm not like trying to convince people. I'm just here because I'm like super excited. Like
Yeah.
I think I was just telling you, Dr. Doughton, I have not seen so much movement, I guess, in therapy, like people feeling so much better for years. And so for me, it makes me look at my business and say, like, how can I switch to doing more of this and less of what I usually do? And I don't think one size fits all. I think that if I can get folks in there who were able to like kind of get some of those resources or that grounding on board, and then do the reprocessing where we move it from the limbic system to the neocortex, we can start to see them shift the way that they feel about the memory. And so like if people are like, well, how can I ever feel good about this thing that happened? Or will you make me forget what happened? No, you're not going to forget it. You hear this too, right?
Yeah, make me forget. When people are like, I don't want to do it because it made me forget. It's like, no, it's not about making you forget, right? It's about changing your emotional charge and your reactivity to the event that originally happened.
Beautifully said, because it's so great when we can like express ourselves and share stuff and through like talk therapy. It's life-changing for a lot of us. And at the same time, sometimes it's still stuck in the brain in certain ways where when we see a TV show or we hear a certain, thing or something, we're still triggered. So what can happen is like EMDR actually moves it from one part of the brain to the other and back and forth, allowing us to reprocess it, or at least that's one of the ways they think it works. And so in doing that, you don't forget it, just like Dr. Doughton just said, you don't forget it. It doesn't go away. You don't even think it was okay. You're not like, oh, this was great that this happened. We're not like here doing some weird reverse psychology on you. It's really just to bring you to a place of like almost observing it like a movie, like, oh, this scary thing happened and I'm okay. Or this scary thing happened and like I'm safe in this moment, right? So it's kind of like just sort of a different experience with it.
I like to think about it in the context of when you're triggered by something and your body and your mind feel like and believe that the original trauma is happening to you in the present. So that is why your heart rate can change. That is why your emotions elevate, because your body, just like it did in the original time, is preparing you to fight off that, whatever that event is, or preparing you to survive that event. That's problematic when the trauma already occurred. So what EMDR is helping you do is let what already occurred occur, and that you be able to think about it and talk about it and know that it happened without still believing that it's happening to you right now in this moment, right? And so it is allowing the past event to be what it was, you to have your thoughts about it, those beliefs about it, but not to have it activated for you right here and now.
I really like how you said that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
So I wonder, we've talked a little bit about this, and I think that it'd be helpful for our audience. Who do you think are good candidates for EMDR intensives, or what types of trauma is like appropriate? As people are thinking about like looking for a therapist, people say like, I want EMDR, I want EMDR intensive. Like, how do you weed through that and make sure that they're a good fit?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, a great point for us to go over. I think a lot of people are a good fit for EMDR intensives if they feel like they have a good understanding of like where their disassociation is. Meaning like if they're like, oh, you know what, when I start to space out or I notice myself sort of like thinking about other stuff, I think I'm not really here. So, like, when people have, like, some sort of understanding of the things that sort of elicit some disassociation or some what I like to think of as, like, a protector that comes in and, like, sort of blocks them from the here and now, which can take a long time to figure out. Like, okay, what does it feel like for me? How can I spot it? How can I at least just tell my therapist, "This is what I look like when this is happening?" So when folks, are not super, super disassociative and have some resources on board, meaning they have a friend they could call in between EMDR intensive chunks, right? Or
Mhm.
they have a good relationship with their breath work, or they're meditating, or um, they dance, or they do something that like sort of helps them get in the moment so that when we're doing this really heavy duty work with the past, which sometimes we can do it with something that makes them scared for the future, but generally when we're doing work with the past, around a trauma, they can also be okay right here, right now, so that we're not, as you always say, like, so that we're not re-traumatizing them. So long as they have some of that stuff on board, they're a great candidate. Meanwhile, we teach them a lot too. So, like, a lot of times before we start actually, always before we start the reprocessing, where we
Mhm.
move stuff from one part of the brain to the other and back and forth, when we do that part, we are making sure that they have lots of resources on board. So some of my favorite, which you might use as well, are like light stream, where we
Mhm.
bring in some imagery of letting light sort of dissolve some of the distress in the body, which is like, "Ooh, that feels so good." And then, we can do, like, calm, safe space imagery where we have them go to a calm, safe space and feel held in that space. So these are some of the things, but some people feel just as resourced by petting their dog or dancing or listening to, like, a soothing inner child playlist. There's really no wrong way. We just make sure that what they're doing works for them and doesn't have them, like, leave their body more.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. And for people who are doing intensive, are you assessing for like, is there a different process for people who are more disassociative than people who are less, or you just make sure you just do a lot of resourcing for everybody because it's an intensive, or what does that look like?
So we do lots and lots of resourcing regardless. And then if they are disassociative, that's a really good question. That's totally fine. We just want to know what their like signals are so that
Mhm.
they're not so that we can bring them back to the moment, so that we could take lots of breaks, so that we could do whatever fits their needs. But like the main thing would just be to know what their disassociation looks like, make sure their resources are there on board, they're able to sort of relax in between sessions, and in the moment, and then to also help them to focus on a snapshot of a memory. So sometimes folks will come in with like complex traumas, like developmental trauma or multiple, sexual assaults, and we will help them to focus on one particular component of the memory, not because it's to reduce all the horrible things that happen, but just so that it helps them to reduce the charge, feel like less triggered by that particular incident. And then we can create some, what I believe to be like hopefulness, and help them to feel better about the work that they just did. And then hopefully that can like translate to them continuing to do that work. So sometimes the intensive is just like opening the door,
Mhm.
feeling more hopefulness around the incident, feeling like more empowerment, less charge, and then doing more work.
Mhm. Okay. And, I had something
Oh,
resourcing.
sorry, I just
Oh,
talked a bunch.
no, no, it's good, it's good. Um, so someone comes in to you for an intensive, is it like 2 days, 3 days, and then that's it? The weekend and they're done?
Oh, I just had someone ask me this. Yeah, it's like totally understandable to wanna like keep working with the person that you just did some really great work with.
Not right, but,
Um,
like, 'cause some people, like, I mean, not trying to say, like, in a funny way, but, like, people want a quick fix, right? People
yeah,
want not to say that it's
yeah,
quick because
sure.
you're basically I hear what you're saying, it's multiple hours over several days, so you're just truncating
That's it.
therapy,
Yeah,
right? But it's quick in the sense that, a lot of times working through trauma can take anywhere from 6 months to a year in some of the more traditional methods when you're working with complex trauma. And so you're saying that you can work with some of these more complex traumas in an intensive weekend. So I'm just curious, like, is that then the one and done, or is that done? Like they're like, it's resolved and they can kind of be better in their lives, or
sometimes it is, and then sometimes they're like, "Can I sign up for another one?" Because
Mhm,
this just opened up all the stuff around childhood. So maybe we'll address something
mhm,
that happened more recently, like a single incident, trauma in adulthood, and what that might look like could be like a car accident or
mhm,
fear of going on a plane or OCD around COVID or whatever, right? So we might
mhm,
target something right now only to have a whole chapter of things open from childhood, and folks will say, "Can we do some more around this?" And so
mhm,
that could be either done with another therapist or with their EMDR intensive therapist. So that's a great question. It definitely can open up more. I think the cool part about intensives, there's a few things, but one of them is that when you meet with someone for, let's say, 2 or 3 hours, there is less of the time spent on catching up, opening and closing. So I think
mhm,
that's, like, part of it,
mhm.
and then it also makes me think of what you've told me. I forget, I don't know which researcher you told me about, but you had read something about 15 minutes being helpful for some folks
The
even.
touch points, right?
Could
And
you tell us
so
about that?
yeah, basically when we look at for trauma and recovery in the brain and like in therapies, right? We do like a traditional, like you meet us hour a week. Well,
Mhm.
actually, what would be more effective, and our lives don't lay out this way, our structures don't lay out this way. What would be more effective is if even if you're doing like 5 to 15 minutes of those therapeutic interventions daily that could add up to an hour,
Yeah.
that's actually more effective and would be quote unquote quicker, right? Because it's not waiting the whole week, week after week after
Huh,
week
yeah.
in that sense. And so it's your touch points. And so it's okay if you truncate it or like if you have these blocks too, but it's really about points of connection,
Mm.
more so than it is about it has to be 1 hour spread out across several weeks, each week. That makes sense.
That does, yeah, that's so interesting. Thanks for,
And I
explaining it. Mhm.
and I think that was, it wasn't Dr. Bruce Perry, but it was one of his, like,
Like
co
Gabor
people he
Mate
co
or,
one of the people he,
um
like, commonly works with or has worked with in the past, and so I can't pull up his name, but he's another, like, neurotrauma person, talked about that with especially with traumatized children.
Mm. Yeah, I'm not sure who, because I heard about it from you, so I'm not sure, but, that's really interesting. It definitely has me thinking, um, that, like, again, what we've talked about, like, one size doesn't fit all, and it's funny when insurance tries to put us in, you have to do 6 sessions for, let's say, panic attacks, and that's
Mhm.
it. That's all you get covered for. It's like, "No, this could
Mhm.
be related to trauma," and yeah.
Yeah. That's a really good question. So, does insurance reimburse for an EMDR intensive
That,
typically?
could be done in some cases. Sometimes I'll ask people to just ask their insurance how much they'll get reimbursed,
Mhm.
but I'm not super sure that insurance will always reimburse, and insurance definitely won't probably, I should say, probably won't reimburse the whole thing.
Mhm. Well, I don't know if they almost ever do that. And so, like, you're billing under a different code. Are you using like the same, like, I don't have it memorized, but like a 90837 adult individual code, or is it? I'm not billing under, but like on their invoice or their bill, is that code there, or it's a like a different service type of code?
So providers do a number of different things. Right now, I haven't really figured out exactly what I want to do with, how to bill, but I've just been doing 90791 for like some
Oh,
of
the
the initial
email?
appointments.
Mhm.
And then just the regular one. So if they wanted to try and get reimbursed for one regular session, they could, because I've recently heard that they're not doing add-ons right now. So I'm not super sure where that'll go and how different insurances will reimburse, but that's a huge thing to consider is like accessibility. Mhm.
I don't know. I know everyone is different, but for fees and stuff generally, is it like, I don't even know, like, is it a lot more than a typical therapy session? Is it like whatever? Because I'm envisioning, like I think you said, they come in and it's like a weekend. It's like 2 days,
Mhm.
2 or 3 days or something like that, right?
Mhm. Sometimes a little more, sometimes less. Sure.
Okay. Okay. And then it's how many hours on those days? Like 2 to 3 hours per day?
It could be like a package of like 10 hours where it's like chunked up into a few days, or it could be like, a couple of months where it's 2 hours every week for a couple of
Mhm.
months. So it could just be different formats. But yeah, it's usually just at least, 5 to 10 hours.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
And they pay for the package
Mhm, and
upfront.
sometimes
So
people will have the package be less than their hourly rate because they feel like that's, like, a more accessible thing for folks, and a lot of times it'll be a lot more, because they feel like they're having someone come in, well, for whatever reasons, yeah,
mhm.
yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Wow, learned a lot today. Just
Mhm.
like how intensive works, because again, I don't do them. Um, at least at this time. I don't know if I ever would, but I don't do them now. So it was learning for me, and then I think really helpful for the audience so they can figure out what some of their options are and if there's something that they want to explore. And well, of course, they can always reach out to Dr. Jaharchi, who's licensed in California and Florida for EMDR intensive, and visit her on selfheartpsychology.com and reach out if you're in one of those two places and want some of those intensives. Could be really helpful. So I'm going to do a little summary because I was asking you all these questions. So you did such a great job of telling us a little bit about what an EMDR intensive looks like, the typical format for helping people feel grounded and resourced in that way, the types of traumas and or people that would be really good for an EMDR intensive, which was kind of like it could potentially be everybody and just looks a little bit different each time. And thinking about billing and payment for people who are exploring this in financially, who are looking at it from a financial perspective. I think that was anything I missed.
No, that was perfect, yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So, of course, we are winding down for our Breaking the Couch series as it stands right now. If you can feel free to reach out to us on Instagram at Breaking the Couch. You can visit us on our website, breakingthecouch.com. Feel free to leave a message or fill out the survey. You can also leave a voicemail through Anchor if that's something you're interested in. And whenever there are books, so if we think of any books that should be for this episode, they'll be in our show notes and you can visit us, our bookshop. and make a purchase from there. Until next time.
If you are looking for a therapist for yourself or your child, you can visit our websites, playfullypsych.com or softheartpsychology.com.
We appreciate you joining us this week and can't wait till there's another opportunity to jump on the couch with you next week.